It's the Indiana Geeking Podcast with our special guests, Jared and TJ. Yay!
We set down Omicron steady 3. I was infected by the spores. Now I have been set free. Protected from the deadly brittle rains. In perfect health as peace and love. We live in harmony. I just want to take it easy. And I'll have the least possible responsibility. They say there's no such thing as the happiness pill. I found it hanging from my tree. You want to scratch and claw each step along the path of life. From the Garden of Eden, mankind was once excised. So if you now I'm bleeding, for once take my advice. Don't fight this sunny feeling, just enjoy being high. On this side of paradise. Vulcan, a country doctor, the spores don't discriminate. You'll have nothing left but love, so let go of your hate. March to your drums, stroll to your loops. But when you tire of it, come back, you can belong to. You'll see the truth. Life can be grand. The spores explode, a light comes on, you'll understand. You want to scratch and claw each step along the path of life. From the Garden of Eden, mankind was once excised. So if you now are bleeding, for once take my advice. Don't fight this sunny feeling, just enjoy being high. On this side of paradise.
Hey there, podcast listeners. This is Tony, the head geek of Indiana Geeking. Before we jump into this week's discussion, I wanted to throw some things out there. To begin, I would like to apologize for the delay between the last episode and this one. I was planning on getting all the editing and extra recording done on July 4th for release on the 7th, but then, well, Liz and I were hit by a car. This past weekend was the first time I've been able to sit at my computer desk long enough to edit and record, so that's why it's been so long. This leads me into something I'm not real fond of doing, but I'm swallowing my pride and just putting it out there. We need help. With work missed and medical bills, our savings have been diminished and we are looking at ways to bounce money around the accounts to cover current bills as our work hours pick back up. If you'd like to help, bounce on over to the Support Geeking in Indiana page listed on the blog and in the show notes, and know that we will both be very grateful. This is neither expected, nor do I really think folks will even really do it because money's tight for everyone right now, but we're kind of grasping at straws anyway. So with that, let's just go ahead, bring on this episode's returning guest for the podcast's first ever part 2 of a two-parter. Welcome back, my friends, to the Indiana Geeking Podcast. We are sitting here once again with Jared and TJ talking Magic the Gathering. If you have not listened to last week's episode, I strongly recommend that you go ahead, stop listening now, go back, listen to last week's because this is a continuation from that episode. Yes, it's an Indiana Geeking two-parter. All right, so we are sitting here. Last week, we talked about Magic the Gathering from June to the end of 2017. We talked about Hour of Devastation, Ixalan, Rivals of Ixalan, and Iconic Masters. This episode, we're going to take a look at 2018 up to this point. We're going to look at Dominaria, along with a lot of their digital assets like Magic the Gathering Arena and stuff like that. So, gentlemen, in April of this year, expansion number 78, Dominaria, came out. What's going on with that?
Stuff. Lots and lots of tasty stuff. This is the 25th anniversary year for Magic, and all the product line has kind of indicated that they have like a 25th anniversary logo they're stamping on everything. And so with Dominaria, we have a return to the roots kind of concept. So we're back to where everything started in terms of storyline. And one of the nods that they did actually is every set that took place on Dominaria, if you read the flavor text of all the cards, you will see the name of every set that takes place on that plane wedged into flavor text.
Oh, I didn't even know that. That's
yeah,
crazy.
So I'll send you that later.
Yeah,
I can show you
great.
somebody went and like it looks like a ransom note. It's like all the little cuts and pastes. But so
well, maybe you could send that to the guy doing the podcast as well, so you can
share
include
it?
that in
yeah.
the show notes.
that guy's
That's really cool.
I hear that guy's a jerk. But yeah, so this is kind of a nod to history and sort of the if you're going to pick out one set as the 25th anniversary expansion, this is going to be it because we've gone back to a number of cards printed from Alpha and Beta have been reprinted in Dominaria. We've Llanowar Elves, Juggernaut, Fire Elemental. Those are the only ones that pop into my head. But
Cards I know.
Yeah, man.
so so that's been the theme is go back to the origins, bring back characters and stories from the early days. So we have the Weatherlight Saga comes back around to Teferi. Karn, Jaya Ballard, who else? It's.
I mean, that's pretty much it. I mean, there are elements of the world that are, reminiscent of and evocative, right, of those old storylines.
If there was such a thing as the throwback set, this might be it. Kind of.
Well, which is funny, right? Because they thought that Time Spiral was going to be that, which it was in many ways.
But more Time Spiral was more that in a structural way as opposed to this is more that in a story way.
Absolutely
where
right.
With Time Spiral in the 3 sets in that block, you had the past, the present, the future. Whereas here in Dominaria, it's really the throwback set, and it gives the old players some flavor to harken back to. It gives newer players. I won't say that it's a more basic set, but in some ways it is, where you can do plenty with it, but also if you're a less experienced player, you don't feel overwhelmed either.
I mean, it really is, I used this word before, but it really is evocative of what Magic used to be, which is why I think, this is going to be the big topic of our discussion here, is why it's so successful, right?
Sure.
I mean, it is so back to basics,
and it's selling better than any of the last 4 sets.
Oh, it's crazy. If you listen to, hopefully you're listening to this after listening to the last episode, and we were not very nice.
We were panning quite hard
to kind of what happened in Magic in the last it's May now, so maybe the last 8 or 9 months. But Dominaria is a total 180 in almost every sense. They knew it too. I mean, that's kind of the common theme here too, is they're not stupid. They make some weird decisions, but they knew exactly what they were doing. They were saving it all up for this expansion being, as TJ said, the celebration of the 25 years of Magic. And I couldn't be more excited, man, to go back to all of these tropes that I know. The story of the world, just to give you kind of an overview, is it's been, you probably know this better than I do, but maybe 100 years, I think they said, 80 or something. It's like 80 to 100 years since the last time we've been on Dominaria. And the world itself understands that it is a product of a handful of calamities and a handful of kind of heroic successes.
And a lot of disjoint things, a lot of disjoint, not so much small pockets of, like, somebody had to draw, they commissioned an artist to draw the map of Dominaria because there are so many places that the map of Dominaria is such a complex thing. And so it's all these disjoint peoples and disjoint complex situations that all come together into one world that has to somehow coexist.
It's one of those classic fantasies world, right? I mean, it's not atypical to the fantasy genre in general.
Right.
But Magic saying, well, how are we going to do this from a gameplay perspective? We're actually building a game around it. And they've done a pretty good job. Although, to that point, it's a really good point you bring up, is they've even said in writing now, okay, we know we haven't even visited a good chunk of the places that we've seen in the past. This is just us focusing on this one continent, really. And so that gives me hope that we'll come back to it, which is great because it's been so successful this time.
And it's sort of like the plane number one, effectively. So I mean, every set that took place in Dominaria was almost every expansion through Arcadian Masks and Invasion, maybe.
That's right.
And then sporadically after that, so the Time Spiral block and so on.
There are some things in Legends like whatever Tetsuko Umezawa or the Toshiro Umezawa was a card, and he came from Kamigawa, but that was like the only one, really.
Yeah,
and the Phyrexians come from a different thing, right? But that's the whole point of them being on.
That's where we get in the Tempest block. So back in '97, so probably about, if you consider that original storyline to have been about a 6 to 7 year cycle through, that's about halfway through in the Phyrexian War and everything that comes with that. So that was kind of where they started to really write their own story. I mean, Ice Age had story, Mirage had story, but when they got to the Weatherlight and then the Tempest block, that's when it started becoming this really cohesive thing where it's like, here's a long-standing thing that needs to be told about, and they ran that over 6-7 sets
for a long
at that point.
Time. Yep.
Right.
So do you want to touch on kind of where Dominaria is from a constructed standpoint, what some of the cards look like, and why they're really important, why they're bringing people back to the game? And maybe, Tony, if you want to jump in, I don't know if you've had a chance to play with any of these cards.
I haven't touched any Magic cards in a couple years.
Whoa. So I think we'll talk about some of them, though, and they'll be pretty reminiscent, I hope, of things that were that you used to play with, that we all did.
Sure. So with Dominaria, one of the big things is legendary items, legendary creatures, legendary artifacts. Legendary sorcery is a new type, so that's a bit of a novelty there. Every booster pack comes with one legendary thing guaranteed, and it can be and there can be legendaries at uncommon now, which is not really been a thing in the past. So generally, legendary had been reserved for rare and mythic cards. So every booster pack now, the booster pack construction's gotten a little weird because I opened a pack last week where every booster pack is usually it's 10 commons, 3 uncommons, a rare, a land, and a token. Generally, that's how the construction of a booster pack. Well, with Dominaria, and if you had a foil, you lost a common, and the foil was at the back. I believe it was behind the rare. So it went. So then you'd have 9 commons, 3 uncommons, a rare, a foil, a land, a token. So now with the construction of a booster pack, if your guaranteed legendary is an uncommon, you now have a situation where the back of the booster pack is, from the back, it's token, land, foil, legendary, then the rare.
Unless that foil is legendary.
Unless the foil is legendary. It's a whole thing. It's like, oh, what is happening here? So I open a pack that's like, okay, it's like I'm looking for the rare. It's like I'm kind of going one at a time. It's like, okay, so token, land, uncommon that's a legendary, foil. So one of these there's got to be a rare here somewhere, right? It's like I had to go through 6. It was the 6th card down. I'm just like, what is this?
Yeah,
So,
and they have to do that for collation purposes, right?
yeah.
So
That's got to be really hard too, because
there are people. I am not being facetious in any way. There are people with multiple PhDs in advanced theoretical mathematics who design the collation of these booster packs to make sense within a limited environment, so as to create enough of any given game element to make everything balanced.
well,
And they did a good job. All the PhDs paid off. But
and that's the complexity of a modern booster pack. Whereas, like back in the olden days, it was in original Alpha Beta Unlimited, you had 11 commons, 3 uncommons, and a rare. And the collation was such that if you knew what the print sheet looked like, once you saw the first 2 commons, you could then figure out what the next 9 were going to be, because the collation was there was not mixing. There was no mixing there really.
And then you'd open up half a box, and because if you were smart, you knew what you got based on what the sheets were looking like, based on what the sheet that corresponded with the box you got.
Sets
Antiquities
totally. And Legends were goofed. Antiquities, the mixing was poor. Legends, the mixing was non-existent. There were 2 different types of Legends boxes. So the uncommon mixing, Mana Drain is an uncommon in Legends. So if you opened the first pack in a box and you saw that you had uncommons from the wrong half of the sheet, you knew you could not get
you
a
better
Mana
sell
Drain.
the rest of that box because you weren't going to
Now,
get
granted,
anything.
at that time, if you were cracking Legends boxes, Mana Drain was worth $2 or whatever. It was not a valuable card. Commander drove that up, I think, because it was not super valuable until Commander took off, and then suddenly it's like, oh, this is Counterspell with monster upside. Okay. So best I've ever Mana Drained was a 13 Eldrazi I got one time. So I got 13 mana off a drain. It was great. So with Dominaria.
And so it's sealed. Just I brought it up on my phone. You guys can't see
Could
it.
you move the phone? I guess these are not shielded.
Oh, we're getting.
Oh, that's fun. Oh, that's good.
Excuse me. let me just check my
Oh,
phone
hey!
in the
While
other
I
room.
throw my phone away. No, I was showing TJ on my phone. He was talking about cracking, and he's 100% right. And it's so funny that we have gone from that to where we are now. But a sealed box of Legends is approximately $20,000 if you have an English.
Ever so slightly less than my car. So.
Yeah. So just to put everything that he was saying in perspective.
Ever so slightly more than my car.
Oh my God! It's just insane.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. It's like the print runs were tiny back then. Print run of Alpha Beta was 10 million, Unlimited 35 million, Arabian Nights 10 million. And it wasn't until you got to Revised when you saw a 9-figure print run. Revised was like 500 million. So those print runs were tiny back
And
then.
even then, we expect, because some of those were tests, really, honestly, that half of that product is just non-existent anymore.
Yeah.
It just isn't out.
Well, and the way that people treated cards back then too. It was
and you shove them up and you tear them up and it's whatever. It's gone.
sleeves
whatever.
were non-existent.
Yeah, we've talked about that before.
There was
What's
no
a
accessories.
sleeve?
Yeah.
It's like you're
Exactly.
looking at some of my old cards going, what is going on with these? It's like they're all worn evenly.
That's true. That's absolutely right.
They're not marked. They're all equally beaten to hell. So.
So let's talk about Dominaria from maybe from a sales perspective, because you hit on that a little bit. From what I've seen, what I've heard, and I listen to all sorts of people from everywhere, and I talk about this stuff incessantly. The sales have been astronomical. They've gotten, again, I said this before, but they knew what they were doing. They knew they were going back to the place where everyone who hadn't touched, like a Tony, for instance, well, you played Magic in the past couple of years, but people who haven't played Magic in 10 years were like, I know that. I know that person on that box art. I know that silver golem.
I've seen that guy.
Exactly.
I know him.
And they were like, sure, I'll go into I almost said Books A Million. Those don't exist anymore. But I'll go into Barnes & Noble.
Yeah,
and
they
I'll
did.
buy.
There's one up at 86.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah.
sweet. Well,
Trader's
then
Point. There's one at Trader's
if they
Point.
go to that shop that I thought was non-existent anymore.
Borders is the one that's gone.
Oh, there we go. Then they'll say, okay, well, whatever. I'm doing my normal shopping, but holy moly, this resonates with me. I wonder if this is any good. I'll buy 3 or 4 booster packs, right? And that has been such the overwhelming response that they have sold out at the factory. Like, they're done. They're done with it for now. We don't know anything about continued. I'm sure they'll continue to print, but they've gotten smart. If you listen to our last episode, we talked a little bit about how they were printing to demand. And because they were doing that, there's tons of product left on shelves. There's tons of products in people's basements and in warehouses. You can find anything you want over eBay from the last probably 3 or 4 years. Like and it will be the same price that it was when it came out. Period. I do not think that is going to be the case with Dominaria moving forward. Oh, we missed one. We missed one that we get to add. I totally forgot about it. We missed Unstable, didn't we?
Oh, we totally forgot about Unstable.
We forgot about it. We can talk about it.
Well, I was going to say, that wasn't one that was like an official on the list.
But it makes me think about it because that was actually, as I'm talking about this, that was the first time in sort of this postmodern era, really, where they have stopped printing to demand because it worked before, right? So they're going back to this kind of theory now. So it's difficult even if you go to your local game shop to find a Dominaria box unless they bought a whole bunch of them. Mm-hmm. And even if they did, they're probably selling out, which is good. That is not a bad thing.
And they're commanding the full price that you can reasonably sell a box at. Because if you buy individual booster packs, MSRP is $3.95, I think. Mm-hmm. Some shops will do, sometimes you'll see they'll fold the tax and they'll make a $4 tax included or something like that just to make the math easier or whatever. If you're paying cash, it's that's an easy thing to do. $20 bill gets you 5 packs or something. Right. And then box price is usually a little lower than that. So most places you can buy a box for between 100 and 110. That's usual box price. Dominaria boxes are commanding that full price because some of these recent sets boxes have sold for 80 or 90 because
$80 on eBay.
Store still makes a few dollars on it. Wholesale is 73, I think.
Yeah, so these wholesalers who are buying at 70, you're right, who are buying, and then they'll get a manufacturer. I shouldn't say that. More of a distributor discount, and they're paying closer to $70. They'll get 1 million boxes. Some of these guys out in California, they'll fill their warehouses with them, but then they'll put them on eBay for 80 plus a.
You make it up in volume. You make it up in volume.
Exactly. And they sell all of them. You made $3 million, right? Yeah. And so that's it. And because Magic was printing to that amount, and so what that was doing, it was then devaluing the cost of everything else, and it was hard to enjoy it as a collectible card game.
Sure.
Because everything, it was not worth what you were paying for it.
Yep.
But I think this is really where
the iconic Masters box right there. Yeah. That was where that folded. So.
And so now we're turning the corner, I hope. I really do.
Yeah. And the excitement on Dominaria has been pretty high. I know it's selling better than the Ixalan blocks, and it's selling better than Our Devastation, Amonkhet, and then that also brings us to Firesong and Sunspeaker. Because
this is a great
that's
topic.
A new thing.
That's a really good topic.
It's not an entirely new thing, but it's not something that they've done in a very long time. Promotional card that if you buy a box of Dominaria and your local game store still has the promo card. There's been a buy a box promo for quite some time. That's always been a thing. Usually it's an alternate art rare out of the set. So you get a foil rare, alternate art, whatever. In Dominaria, they've changed that. There is a card called Firesong and Sunspeaker. It is a legendary creature, and it is only available as the buy a box promo. You can buy as many Dominaria booster packs as you want, and you will not get a Firesong and Sunspeaker. Mm-hmm. The only way to get it is through the buy a box promo. This has rubbed some people the wrong way. It's a single card. It's not a huge deal that it's like the card is. It's fun. It has some potential. I think it's a trap. I don't think it's a great card. It's not something where it's like everyone's going to be falling over themselves. If they had made it a colorless card, a land and artifact, that might have changed things.
Can you imagine?
Imagine if it had more utility. It's a red and white creature, so I mean,
it's already fine, but
it's adequate. It's not. It could have been in the set, and nobody would have thought anything of it. Yeah. It's not so great and so amazing that it's cool. You can look up what it does. It has a lot of words on it. So, but that has freaked some people out. The only other time that Magic has done this is, the old Mana Crypt that was like if you bought a book, there was a certain book.
Is that the only way to get Mana Crypt?
At the time it was.
At the time,
until they printed it in Eternal Masters.
No way, is that right?
It was in Eternal Masters. There's a mythic rare Mana Crypt in Eternal Masters.
Yeah, but that was the only other time.
It might be a Judge Foil. I don't remember.
It is a Judge Foil.
It's Judge Foil. So there's 3 printings of it. There was the book promo, the Judge Foil, and the Eternal Masters Mythic Rare.
Now, was the book promo from the first Magic? Was that the card from the first Magic the Gathering novel that you mailed in?
It wasn't Arena. It was right before that.
It was. It was from back in. And Arena was the other card that was only until. Time Spiral.
I think I had
Time Spiral. You could get it. Yeah. If you bought the book, in the book, the back page was an order form that you mailed in to get your mana crypt.
I had that card.
There was a guy. I just watched a video on.
I'm
YouTube.
sorry, Jared just lit up, and I'm like, no, dude, this was sold
In
years
the
ago.
past tense, yes. There was a guy. So the way that they distributed these, though, I just watched a video. Guy that used to work for Wizards had a shrink-wrapped brick of 60 mana crypts. He had to crack it open to figure out what the heck it was because there was no indication. It was just a shrink-wrapped brick of 60 mana crypts. And so he had to crack it open. He cracked it open. He's like, oh, that's what this is. Oh, that was probably worth more before I broke that seal. It's still 60 mana crypts, which are like 100 plus a piece.
Yeah,
but,
it's still a lot of money.
So that was kind of a thing where it's like there's just been these few cards that the only way to get them was through some promotional thing. They've only done this on these few occasions.
It's only that and
Arena
and the dragon.
There was a dragon, the
I forget
Japanese
what it
dragon,
was.
the Chinese dragon, the Asian dragon.
It was
of some
called
sort.
something weird,
I can't
But it
pronounce
had to
it.
be some sort of convention.
Specific event. Yeah, that's the only time.
And that was a screw up.
There was another dragon. There's two dragons because Nalthini dragon was the other one. Dragon
you had
Con,
to win that one, right?
Dragon Con. I think it was the other way around. I think the Asian dragon you had to win, and the Nalthini dragon was Dragon Con 95 or 4. It was a promo for.
And
Dragon
there are
Con.
some other ones like that, but they're not as
It's pretty-
egregious, right?
right,
It's
yeah.
not like the 1997 world champion.
the world champion
whatever.
thing that
like
was-
you won it.
that was
like, it's fine.
encased in a trophy. It was encased in plastic, so it's
Yeah.
like that's what it was. It was the trophy,
Right.
Or like Richard Garfield's special cards,
Exactly.
life event
The
cards,
kids and the child's birth and
the
stuff,
the marriage and the childbirth and everything. So this is not a thing that comes up often. Most other promo cards are just available through the sets, F&M promos, which thank good. Oh, we got to
Which
talk
are
about
great,
that.
by the way.
We got to talk about that. Yeah. So it's rubbing some people the wrong way.
Yeah.
It's not so egregious and so out there where it's like the demand outstrips the supply or anything like that because
True.
it's a card you have to build around. I saw a Fire Song and Sunspeaker commander deck that wasn't that impressive.
I mean, they're just not, right? I mean, that's
Yeah.
everyone's worry is, well, this is a cool way that I like to. And Magic players are notorious. Let me tell you this: if you're listening to some of our episodes and like, well, I want to get into Magic, I want to like. I
Don't
hope,
be us.
I hope you don't get into that mindset where I'm a Magic player. I pay. A lot of people are like this. They're like, I'm a Magic player. I paid good money, and if things aren't the way that I think they should be in Magic, I'm going to get upset, and that's not going to change anything.
the game
for
is
you.
bigger than you are.
It is much bigger than you
and
are.
it will always be bigger
And-
than you
and you
are
will do-
unless you're Mark Rosewater or Richard Garfield.
Heck yeah. And all you're going to do by acting that way is turn other people off of the game. And that's actually the worst thing you can do for
You
yourself.
have to employ Wheaton's Law.
Yeah.
That's really what
exactly
you
right.
have to do.
And so many Magic players don't do that. And this is the exact example that we're talking about. And it's really a shame because, again, like I said, the mindset of, well, I play Commander, I've got people, that's all we do. That's the only way we enjoy the game. And instead of breaking out and realizing, well, okay, great for you, but there are other people who enjoy it in other ways, to say, well, to our specific community, you have done something that's really going to hurt some people's feelings because they're going to have to pay an extra $3 to get this thing to build their $1,000 deck. And it's like, Magic players never think through their arguments, right? And all I'm saying
It's
is,
like that
how does
with
it affect
many
well,
fandoms.
nerds are like that.
Yeah.
What have you done for me lately?
That's exactly right. And it's like, don't be like the game is so much. TJ said it so perfectly. It's so much bigger than you are. Like, just have some patience with it. And like, I was buying those for like $3-4 a pop and put them on TCG Player, sell them for $10 because people want them. The demand is there.
Yeah.
But it's not going to break anybody's bank. Man.
It's a cool card, but it's not. It's some insane thing that's like if it doesn't mean anything to most people. Like I was happy. I got my box of Dominaria. I got my Fire Song and Sunspeaker. That was cool. It's sitting on my desk. I'm probably going to sell it soon because it's not really. I don't think I'm going to do anything with it.
Totally,
So,
man. And we bring this up because they have stated that they're doing this moving forward.
They're going to do this.
This is going to be the norm. So even if you want to complain about it, it's not going to change.
Well, there was also briefly the Ixalan buy a box booster, the specialty booster.
Oh, don't get me started on
that was kind of weird too. So it used to be a single buy a box promo card. You bought your box and you got the foil promo card. Then I think it was only the one time they did Ixalan. I didn't do it in Rivals.
Yeah.
There was a special seeded booster pack that you were guaranteed like certain rares and foils and so on. It was similar to the standard showdown pack. I don't do standard showdown, so that's just a specialty.
Well,
specialty
both
booster
were
pack.
pretty much the same.
Yeah, basically it's a specialty booster pack that's seeded with rares and foils, and they guaranteed you some level of, it could be a bunch of bulk rares or whatever, but you kind of expected you were going to get, something out of it.
Yeah.
Something cool out of it. So.
And those were, they are cool, actually. So, like, they had decent enough stuff that some of those are now selling for, like, if you still have them, people didn't crack them, they sell for, like, $20 a pop, man. And they just go, like, wildfire. And I'm like, why? There's nothing great in here. You might get, like, a foil decent card for standard.
Foil cards, Turner.
Yeah, alone is probably worth 20 or
really
30
cool.
bucks, but it's like
more than that. But
most of them are not. So, whatever. If you get one of those, sell it, put it on eBay. That's the best advice.
You've won the lottery. You've won
done
the
well.
pack lottery.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So we covered Dominaria, I think. From a limited perspective, it is actually fantastic. It's easily the best limited format.
I haven't drafted it yet, but I've done some sealeds.
You'll love it.
I've done some sealeds. Sealed pool I had last night was my first pack was like, it seemed like it was gold. It was I had Shauna Icy Manipulator, Memorial to Glory, and Forebear's Blade. Which
quite good.
Yeah, that pack was really good. And then the rest of it wasn't great, but it was like that was a pretty good start, and I did well in the event. So that's the funny thing with sealed is that like you might get one crazy good booster pack, and then after that it's like, well, now then you don't want to force anything. Same goes for any limited. I mean, you don't want to force anything based on one card. Like if you get in a draft, if your pack one pick one is amazing, you generally probably want to build around that. But if you get nothing else, if nothing else goes by that supports that, well, what are you going to do? So,
you're never beholden to your first pick in that way anyways. But the great thing about Dominaria is the games typically last longer because there's more to do. There's more places to put
a lot of interaction.
Way better ways to actually spend your resources, and that's what makes a good Magic set is being able to spend your resources in the way that helps you gain the most small edges is basically how I explain it.
You got options. That's really, you got things to do.
And you have to make the right decisions with those options to win. And that's what makes a really good limited environment.
Icy Manipulator versus Icy Manipulator. That gets fun. Who's going to budge first?
Right, that one's pretty good. But no, it's awesome. I played pre-release and I had an awesome deck and I won the whole thing and I got a free booster box and now I'm playing whatever. And
now you're playing with house money again.
Exactly, dude. And it's so awesome. And all of the 10 different ways you can combine the 5 colors are all relatively viable. It's fun.
They didn't force you into anything.
No, and we were talking about that in the last episode, why it was such a bust.
It has a lot of exact opposite generalness to it, which is why I've liked core sets.
Sure.
So
I agree.
We'll get there real soon because that's going to be that was something I remember we lamented last year, and then they've gone back on it, which is great.
It's true. Do you want to talk about?
We got to talk about Masters 25.
I was going to say,
Do you want to talk about
go back a little bit because you did bring up, and you see, I pulled notes up and then I lost them. You did bring up Unstable, which was from last Christmas.
Yeah, let's hit it really quick.
That was one of those more fun, like slightly broken.
Oh yeah,
sort of cards.
That's when Mark Rosewater dresses up in a chicken suit once every 5 years.
Right. Yeah.
So Unstable, the unsets, this is the third of them. And an unset is, again, it's actually not legal in anything. They are cards that are made to be funny. There's a card that says something like target player puts their head on the table and must keep their head on the table until as long as this is in play or something like that.
Right.
There's dumb stuff like that. Chaos Confetti.
I would say that was from the original set where everyone would joke about Chaos Orb. You tear it up and you throw the pieces up and whatever it lands on's gone.
Yeah, man.
So dumb stuff like that. So that's what this is it's a set of dumbness, and it's for the amusement of players, and so that it has some financial value to it. Every unset has had a special full art land set, a range of one of each basic land with full art and unique art to it. The art has gotten bigger on every unset. So it used to be the unglued uncards had the art was like in an oval, and it took up most of the card, and I have a number of those. And then when they got to unhinged, there was a thin border around the edge, but the art took up most of the card. Well, now with Unstable, the art goes literally from one edge of the piece of paper to the other. It is full art, and they couldn't really put more art on the card if they wanted to. So, and so that's where you get some financial value in these unique lands, and so they're like $2 to $4 a piece. So that gives you something out of it as opposed to know,
and it's 36
fun.
booster packs, right? So if you get, you're right, $2 to $4 each. You know, I was getting
roughly make up your box price.
Just in lands, right? Yeah. And I was getting them for like $70-$75 a pop, and you just make it all back, and it was great.
And if you get a foil, the foil lands are insanely
like
expensive.
$80.
Between $50 and $80, I think.
There were some boxes in that run. So to give some more background, they were not going to do unsets again because the first one sold to demand about, and they sold out, and they did a good job. And the second one, they were like, well, this is kind of cool. This is kind of funny. Let's print a lot. And they didn't sell a lot of them, and it was actually a loss for the company. So
it took them a long time before they did another
long time. They had to Mark Rosewater, who's the head designer,
on his knees, basically.
Yeah, he said, "Look, let me bring you all this data. People are really asking for it. Please believe me. There is a group out there that wants this." He convinced them. They said, "Whatever. We're flush. Let's do it. We can afford to do this." And they said, "But the one caveat, we won't print that much of it. So at the very least, if it sells out, you know, that's fine. We'll at least have sold all."
We made our commitment to it. And we'll move on. Yeah,
and it was good. It was a success this time. They printed the amount they needed to print. That if you can get them on eBay for quite a bit more than they were originally selling for, which is a sign that the demand is there and the supply is small and limited, like it should have been. And it's awesome, and it's a really good draft environment. The first two were, as TJ said, purely fun. They weren't really meant to be played in any way.
This was actually kind of playable. They thought about it, and there are factions within the unset. They also put one honest to goodness card in it too. Back in Future Sight?
Yes.
Future Sight. So the Future Sight was the third set in the Time Spiral block. Time Spiral went back to it included cards from the past with the old frame. Then you had Planar Chaos, which had cards in the wrong color.
Shifted,
they color shifted cards. That's how you got things like Damnation, which is
Timbermare.
Timbermare. Oh yeah, Timbermare. That was color shifted. So they took cards out of their natural color and then identical in every way except in a different color. And then you have Future Sight. And Future Sight had these future shifted cards, which had some weird bizarro frame that messes with your head.
Yeah.
They did a number of different cards in this way, and some of them have appeared as real cards then in the future. Graven Cairns is a good example. They did 5 lands in each of the friendly 2-color pairs. Yeah. Graven Cairns was the first one to become something later on. Then it wasn't even that much later, it was Shadowmoor. We got
There was a Kithkin.
Was there a Kithkin?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't remember what it was.
Yeah, I just off the top of my head, I know the Graven Cairns because I played it. So I have a full playset of the Future Sight ones because I had bought a bunch of them before Shadowmoor came out. So, but then they made this one land and in Future Sight, and then in Shadowmoor a few sets later they made all 5 of that type, and then the very next set, Eventide, they made the other 5. So they call the filter lands. And so as time has gone on, we've seen some of these future shifted cards appear in other sets. There was a future shifted card. And I don't remember what the heck it's called. It's a goblin of some sort. What's its name? Do you remember?
Steamflogger Boss.
Steamflogger Boss. Steamflogger Boss has this text on it that says something about riggers and contraptions and assembling.
It's got 2 different abilities.
Yeah, it's like if a rigger would assemble a contraption, it assembles 2 contraptions instead, or something like that. Well, at the time, with the cards available, this meant nothing. There was no meaning to this.
It was meant to mean nothing.
It was meant to mean nothing. It was just a red herring they threw in there, and it meant nothing. 8, 9, 10 years later, one of the factions in Unstable is the contraption builders.
Steamflogger
Goblins. And so one card in Unstable is in fact it's the Steamflogger Boss, and it has a black border. It's a properly playable card. You can play it in any format it would be legal in.
Oh, it's awesome.
And
it's foil too.
They're only
you get is foil.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I forgot about that.
Awesome.
So
very smart.
So that concept of riggers and contraptions finally circles back in the unset. So they finally closed that. They closed that loop.
Yeah, they love closing loops, man. That's how they sell boxes.
Now, there was also earlier this year Masters 25, which is the same sort of thing as the iconic Masters we talked about last episode. Yeah. Was there anything interesting about that? Anything worth talking about with Masters 25?
So Masters 25 is probably what people thought Iconic Masters was supposed to be.
Agreed.
Masters 25, they went out of their way to include at least one set from every expansion all the way back to the day one. The cool thing that they did is the original, whatever set the original printing of the card was in, they put a watermark in the text box with that expansion.
It's
symbol.
beautiful. They did a great
Some
job.
of them look really freaking cool.
Yeah.
Blood Moon, which Blood Moon is getting overprinted these days, by the way. That's a funny thing that happens.
Swords of Plowshares.
Well, that's true, yeah. So yeah, they made sure that there was at least one card from every expansion. They bit their lip really hard and put a Homelands card in there.
Yeah. You're right.
What was it? Baron Singer?
Yes.
Yeah, Baron Singer. So they had to find.
That card's great though.
It was. You know what? They didn't choose Serrated Arrows. That was probably that's the only Homelands
Serrated
card.
Arrows is too good though.
Well,
That card's great.
All right, that's the only card in Homelands anybody's heard
It
of.
breaks limited.
Well, that's true. Yes, it would. So decent. Better than Iconic Masters. The God card out of that was Jace the Mind Sculptor, which they had unbanned just before the release of.
Again, they always know what they're doing. They're not stupid.
Nothing is happening seat of the pants style
That's
there.
exactly
Everything is planned meticulously. Whether they are the best plans is up for debate, but everything is planned. So from the value point of view, it had a little more value. There was a little bit more at the top end. There are some issues going on, had been some issues going on, starting around Ixalan and progressing for a couple sets. I think Ixalan Rivals, probably Masters 25, with the print quality and the mixing.
Sure. Yeah.
And I will tell you the story about the mixing from Ixalan. It took the guy at Heroes Emporium about 25 boxes to find the last mythic rare to make a full set. He had to crack 25 boxes before he got the one copy of the last mythic.
A case and a half for you to get at least one copy.
Yeah, so that'd be 9 boxes. He had to go through well over 20 before he found the last one.
Crazy.
So the mixing has been weird. I got a box of Masters 25, and I did not get any of the 5 most valuable cards,
Yeah,
and I only got
really
one out of the top 10. One of the weird things, there are 5 filter lands in Masters 25. I opened 3 of them in 3 consecutive packs.
Yep.
So the mixing has been a little undesirable. I got a foil rare in there, or foil mythic. It was Tree of Redemption. So yeah,
my heart explodes.
it was not a very good box. My box of Dominaria was much better. So, so the mixing, and it's like if I went and bought another box of Masters 25, I'd probably get a decent box out of it statistically. But
mine was.
I remember you saying you got a much better box.
Snaring, bridge, port, 3.
You got all the rares I
lands.
didn't get. I got 3 filter lands.
The click.
I got a click. Yeah, that was the best. That was the most valuable. I got a click. I got a Thalia. I got 3 lands. I got 2 pacts. I got a pact of negation and a pact of summoning.
Yep.
There wasn't much else to say about it after that.
Yeah, but that's just because everything it was feast or famine, dude.
Yeah,
like there was just nothing in between.
Yeah, so
nothing in between.
So, I believe they are. Let's see. They were talking about the printing on Dominaria. The cards feel a little bit different.
Before they were thin and they would just bend in any level of humidity above 1%. I mean, like literally, they were quite bad. And the foils would curl.
The foils
up
were misery.
like horseshoes, man. Like really bad.
The foils. The Amonkhet Invocations were oh man, those things are horseshoes.
Totally.
I mean, those were a mess. I actually talked to a guy at Gen Con last year who runs a shop in Florida, and he's like, I have no use for foils. I live in Florida.
Yeah.
The humidity is just like gone.
Yeah, man.
So hopefully I believe Wizards has made some personnel changes in that regard recently as well.
Oh, they fired the QA guy.
The QA guy, yeah. So hopefully that. Interestingly, they've also part of the Daily MTG Wizards Magic blog. They've got one of their production head honchos who was an artist for Magic in the early days, Tom Wunderstrand, I believe is how you say his name. He's doing some blogs about the actual physical process of making the cards.
Awesome.
He's done a couple posts about that. So they are paying attention, and maybe it's just a matter of it's slow to turn that ship. It may just be that it takes a while to get there, or it may just be they're panicking, or Hasbro's putting the screws down. Maybe that too. So,
but they haven't been this transparent with the product itself probably ever.
True.
Which is really cool. It's
Yep.
cool to see that, for them to be like, okay, look, we know we live in the information age.
Yeah.
You know, we're not pulling up Usenet for you guys to be able to pull rumor about this, right?
Right.
But you guys know it, and you're talking about it nonstop, so
Right.
whatever. I guess we'll talk about it now.
Right,
and they're really doing that with everything, but in particular, the quality, which is good, because Dominaria cards, which I think is what you were getting back around to, are awesome. They feel
good.
so different.
Yes, the quality feels very good. They are less slippery than previous cards.
Yeah.
They're a little gritty almost, so they don't slide
That's a good
nearly
way
as
to say
much.
it, yeah.
They smell different too. True. You crack a Magic pack and it has that smell, that distinctive smell. Dominaria packs smell like gasoline.
They're
It's
kind of
got
like burned. Yeah, it's
they're
weird.
A little funny there.
They're great though, and they feel great, and they play great. My take on Masters 25 from a financial perspective, I think TJ hit on it too. There's some good stuff. There's some fine stuff.
There's definitely
but
some
it was
good
so
stuff.
feast and famine, people were pretty scared away of buying, so it brought demand way down. And so supply outpaced demand pretty hard. So you can still find them for $140, $150 on eBay if you look hard enough. And again, we talked about this in the last episode. MSRP is what, $240?
Yep.
So it's never really going to approach that. Another big part of that is because they had decided to start making these premium sets based around a theme rather than cards that are playable in a certain format. Like we were talking about the modern master sets is what we had before. It was great because if you wanted to break into that format, these were premium cards that you could play with first in a limited format, have some fun, and then keep what you had, and you could build a deck for the modern format, which is everything from 8th edition onward. So that had some utility to it as well, right? But these are more like, the iconic things like dragons and sphinx and angels and stuff. And it's like, okay, whatever. And then, M25, all the cool cards from the last 25 years. And people are like, okay, we can kind of get behind that, but it still doesn't have as much utility as these cards.
Benefits commander players probably the most.
Sure, yeah.
And I don't think they're willing to necessarily admit to that. I don't know if that was intentional or if it's just like it was a strike on their part. If they just whiffed on it. But commander players probably benefited the most from Iconic Masters and Masters 25, to be entirely honest. They did not benefit modern players that much. Modern Masters 17 was pretty good.
It was awesome. Actually, prices are going back up on those boxes because it had
those are not
good
cheap.
Liliana and Snapcaster and lands.
Fetch lands.
Fetch lands. I mean, it was great. It's awesome. I remember being able to buy them for $170, and I thought that was a good deal. And now they're like $230, $240, $250. They're back up to
Basically
MSRP.
at MSRP, yeah.
So, I think that was it. We don't know when the next one is going to be, right? We don't have any sort of
Core 2019
inkling.
will be
That's coming out July, right?
So back for the normal person,
So, so Core 2019, it used to be back in the day, there was the core set of Magic. So what started with Alpha, Beta, and Unlimited, and then every other year they would put out a new core set and rotate some cards out, rotate some new cards in. And that would be legal for the duration of that, that set was available. And then so they go like 5th edition, then 2 years later would be 6th edition, and then the 5th edition stuff would rotate out.
I would like to point out that the Magic the Gathering episodes of the Indiana Geeking Podcast have been going on long enough that we talked about the phasing out of the core sets, I believe, on the very first episode.
Yeah, we did.
And with this episode 4 years later, they're bringing core
coming
sets
back.
So think about that. So we talk about Wizards, kind of some of their brilliance and some of their missteps. This podcast series is actually a pretty good archive of,
It is.
of that kind
A
of
lot of changes though just in the last 4 to 5 years though, because accepting the change from 10th edition to M10, the only real change in the structure of how cards were released when the 4-set year, well, I guess it was a 5-set year.
Yeah.
The madness between Time Spiral and Eventide, and you had Cold Snap in there, so you had 8 expansions in 2 years instead of the usual 6. That was the only real change in 15 years since Mirage, I guess, because that was a 3-set block.
Been 3.
That was the first 3-set block in 96 to 97. So between 96 and 5 years ago, it was pretty much just making the sausage.
Yeah.
And so we're back to core sets, and the idea was that the core set serves a different purpose. They didn't understand. They had gotten away from why do we have this? They thought about it and said, why do we have this core set anymore? And so they decided to dump it. Well, then they realized after a while, oh, we have that so we don't have to print negate in every other expansion.
Which they've been doing, by the way.
Yes, that's what's happened is there was no place for staple cards to land. And so it took up space in expansion sets. So you have cards like negate, cancel, fling, name some others. There's got to be I can't think of any more off the top of my head.
Those are the good ones. Naturalize sometimes.
Naturalize, remove soul.
Yeah.
It's not remove soul anymore. It's
Essence Scatter.
Essence Scatter. Thank you. I'm old. I'm old. I still play remove soul, which is the exact same card. So they were having to jam these into slots in expansions that could have been used for something else. Mm-hmm. So now, granted, sometimes you need it in that for draft. You might need it in that for limited, but you forced it. And we've seen Opt a couple times now. Opt is back.
Twice in a row.
So it gives them a place to put constructed staples in. It's two things. One is it gives them a place to put in constructed staples. They don't have to take up room in an expansion just because they want to put them out in the world or keep them standard legal, unless they really want it in that expansion. And the other thing is it's a nice generic set that will just have a bunch of cards that you can play without having to figure out any new mechanics, without having to. You'll have the evergreen mechanics. Your flying, your first strike, your trample, your vigilance. Scry is now an evergreen mechanic. So you'll have that stuff, but you're not going to have new mechanics in a core set. I have always found core sets to be easy to draft because of that reason, more than likely. And you have some flavor, and you have some. You're going to have good cards in it. It's not just like a wasteland of crummy cards, but it's a place to put things that may not otherwise fit in an expansion, and you free up that space.
And they used to be exclusively reprints.
They used to be exclusively reprints.
And they haven't been for a long time.
Right. Yeah. The last 5 or 6 of them were not. And actually Origins was even mostly new cards, if I recall.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
So.
Which is big, which means if you are listening to this and you want to get back into the game, hopefully we've convinced you now that we're 4 episodes in. I would say that would be a good place to start. Wait until M19 comes out. They used to call them. They didn't call it intro. They called them. I think they called them base level sets.
Advanced. So
other ones were advanced. Right?
Basic was like Portal and Starter and things like that. Sure. So they had 3 grades of it. It was basic, advanced, and expert. So expert was the expansion sets, and then the core set or the basic set or whatever they called it that year was the advanced, and then the basic was like your learner set. So they actually did have fewer rules. They would have fewer interactions and so on. Sure. So like Portal only had creatures, sorceries, and lands. That was all Portal had in it. And so they just really made that simpler. Some of the cards from Portal 3 Kingdoms, holy crap.
Oh yeah, man.
There's some stuff in Portal 3 Kingdoms that is worth
P3K was great.
Monster money.
You can only get the English cards in Australia.
Is that how that works?
Yeah, that's why they're so expensive.
I did not know that.
And that's so then they shipped a handful of boxes from Australia back to the U.S. because stores were buying them. Mm-hmm. But the cards are impossible to find.
Oh, yeah.
So that's why they're so expensive.
Imperial Seal.
Yeah, man. Exactly. So the Chinese ones are actually pretty cheap because they were flooded. The market was
Judge Foil Imperial Seal is much cheaper than the P3K one.
Oh, God, yeah. The English,
Yeah, like 150 or so for the Judge one, and it's like 300 or 400 for the real one. It's like, oh my gosh.
There's like, I think, it's funny you talk about that. I think I heard a statistic, a buddy of mine who's a collector, who's like, yeah, there are actually 4. He like knows the number of English Imperial Seals per state, and Indiana has like 3 or 4.
That's like when you get cards graded, and the grading service has a list of like the total population of cards they've graded.
Totally.
Yeah. So we should brief aside here what I mean by a judge foil. Magic judges are not paid in cash; they are paid in product. So there are every year. There's a handful of special cards they will print in alternate art foils. They tend to be like high-end staple cards. Mana Drain is one that comes to mind. Demonic Tutor, Lightning Bolts. Nowadays. Yeah, I mean, there's all bets are off on what could be Crucible Worlds. Yeah, the Imperial Seal. Yeah. So these tend to be somewhat valuable cards, and so effectively they just print a bunch of these, and when you judge X number of events as a certified Magic judge, you get some judge foils. And then they, I think, almost expect that the judges are probably going to sell these, and so on the third party market. So that's how they make money effectively. And there's been grumbling about that. The judges get upset, and
sometimes the foils are not as good as other ones, but sometimes they print these sweet lands where they get 5 of them, and they're each worth $300 each.
Sure, yeah. So I mean, there is value there, and it makes it so that they don't actually have to be on anybody's payroll. But
they get to skirt that.
Yeah, they're effectively printing money. I mean,
they've had that for a long time.
And when the judges get together and complain, then they print better judge foils. That's pretty much how it works. Every time, yes. The judge foil Mana Drain is surprisingly cheap, though. It's the same price as the Legends one.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
I keep coming back to Mana Drain just because I need one. I need another one. So,
I would like to point out before you move on to start talking about the digitals, because we're starting to run out of time on this hour.
No, perfect.
I would like to point out that I thought I was going to have to say we're going to make a drinking game out of every time that TJ says the word sliver.
Hey,
over these episodes,
not once.
He has not said sliver once. However, it is now going to become every time he says Mana Drain.
One track mind. Man.
So
when you got it.
As we wrap up, and the cool thing is we'll be able to talk about what happened with the core set and the new expansions that are going to be coming out later this year. We're going to be able to talk about that in a year.
Great, man.
See how all that worked. But right now, as we mentioned earlier, there's also some digital assets that they're using, one of which is the beta test of Magic the Gathering Arena, which is a way to play Magic on your computer. I know, Jared, you said you've been playing that. TJ, have you been trying it at all?
I have not touched it.
For myself, and I'll let you, because you're going to have a much probably better view on this. I'm on the beta, and it is not beginner friendly. From what I'm seeing.
So what made you feel that way?
Just it kind of expects that you know how to build a deck.
Interesting.
And dive in. I have not found any tutorials that I'm looking at. They're just like, here are a bunch of cards to build a deck out of. Go at it. And I'm just like, start drooling on myself a little bit. And I haven't opened it in months. I opened it up this morning just to take another peek at it to make sure this hasn't been added. And it hasn't. But I did end up with a bunch of packs that I didn't know I had that I just went through and opened.
That's because they
up.
reset it. They did a total sweep, and then they gave everybody packs back. But that's it's interesting you say that, right? Because I would assume, and from what I've read, that the developer's expectation is if you are in the beta, right? If you jump through those hoops, I'll say it that way, then you probably are enfranchised in some way, right? It's not like they gave them out to people who weren't. They gave out some keys and stuff to people who play other big games, the games they're competing with, right? Like all the Hearthstone streamers, the people who anybody can play Hearthstone because it's free and it's, I think, simpler than Magic. I think it's a great game.
Yeah.
But those people who are streaming sure, they all got beta keys to Arena in the hopes that once they were able to stream Arena content, they would. But those people even are going to know how to build a Magic deck. So I don't think the developers thought going into it, at least this is my hope, that they would need to build that kind of tutorials into the beta version. So my assumption, and to be fair, Magic is notorious for never ever in the history of ever having good tutorials about anything ever.
The barrier to entry was finding somebody who could teach you how to play because this rule book is useless. That's pretty much.
Oh my God. And it's been that way for 20 years.
And then hoping and praying the person who taught you to play actually knew what they were doing and wasn't just making stuff up on the fly.
So, I mean, listeners, please know that we all three are joking about this because we've all had this exact experience.
We've all suffered.
Every Magic player is like that. So it's, again, that reinforces the fact that they've never had a good tutorial for anything, just period, right?
Yeah.
So I get it. I get it. They, when they released, let me talk about Arena in kind of a larger zoom out view. So this is their response to losing market share. Well, we weren't even in the market, right? But trying to take some market share away from these big digital games like a Hearthstone, like an Eternal. There are a zillion of them, but those are the two that come to mind. Elder Scrolls had one for a while. They still have one. Gwent.
I think I might have played the Elder Scrolls.
The Elder Scrolls was pretty good. But there's a handful of those, and they were like, why the heck aren't we? Oh, I should say Hex. I actually used to stream Hex, so I should probably say that. But
Hex are we doing that?
yeah, exactly. So they were like, well, we are the OGs, though. We're the granddaddies. Like, we invented this. Why aren't we in this digital space in this way? In the really, it's funny you even say that you didn't think it was user friendly, right? Because think how bad, we've had this conversation before. Think how bad Magic the Gathering Online is. That product's been around for more than 10 years. And to think that they had to come up with something to compete with that.
They had to compete with their own product, which tells you how lousy their product was.
Digital trading card game product. They had to come out with another thing that's just shinier, basically. Like that's rough, right?
And I'm not saying I don't find it beginner friendly. It's beautiful. I mean, I keep the sound on and all that, the sound effects on it, and the opening of the packs and the being able to see the cards.
No, it looks great.
It looks good. I just haven't been able to. It's like I don't want to go in and start playing against a complete stranger when I've got. It's like I have no idea if this. It's like I don't know what I've put together.
Yeah, and they don't have any. The other thing that's rough in the beta is they don't have any like robots to test against. There's no AI component, which is unusual for a digital card game. I don't think I've known of one that has released that hasn't had that, so that's a little weird.
But once again, it's only a beta. So.
True, exactly. So you can only expect so much. But it is. I've played Magic the Gathering Online. Oh God, probably 10 years now at this point, and there are people who have played even longer than me. And that's where I primarily, if I'm streaming on Twitch, it's what I play. Because the packs sort of equate to the real dollar value, and you can sort of turn them into a currency in the form of tickets. They just have one currency, and it's just $1 for one ticket, right? And so you can turn your digital product into those tickets. If you want to sell those back into the market through eBay or something, or through other services, you can, and you can get your money back out of it. Arena eschews that crowd entirely, which is now going to become, me included, kind of a fossilized niche crowd of people. There was some outcry when they were talking about Arena originally, because they're like, well, what about my MTGO collection that has $5,000 worth of cards in it, quote unquote? What am I going to do? And they're like, well, you'll just keep playing Magic the Gathering Online. Like, why would you play Arena? And I understood that argument at first until I started playing Arena, and I was like, this is sweet. Like, this is really good. Like, the cards do the things I expect them to do. You get a little less freedom in what you do, but the vast majority of the time, the game understands what the maximum optimized play is that you're doing anyways, and so it'll spend your mana accordingly. If you want to, you can turn all those stops off and click your mana to produce your resources to play your spells, which, when things become more complex, will probably end up doing. And then at that point, it's really not any different than Magic the Gathering Online, like at all, except that it will be primarily the newest cards. Right now, Arena, you would play Magic the Gathering Online because you could still play with like a Black Lotus. You could play with your Moxen, stuff like that. Those exist on that platform. They will never exist in MTG Arena. It just won't. The audience is anyone who wants to learn how to play the game and wants to do it for free. And B, people who want a good way to jump into like the limited environment and to just jam through drafts at about half the price that you would pay on Magic the Gathering Online. And that's it. And hopefully it'll be mobile too, right? They want to get into that space, and they want people to play in that space, because that's how they're going to make the most money. Because not everyone has a laptop they're going to want to play it on, but everyone has an iPhone or an Android that they'll play Magic on, period. Yeah. And that's the whole point. And why not? Good for them. They're about 6 years too late now, I think. But it's cool. It's really fun.
I see Hearthstone people jamming on the phones all the time. So,
yeah, exactly. And think about bringing Magic to the fray in that way. Magic's just an infinitely. I love Hearthstone. I play it a ton. But I think Magic is a much better game. Much better. I think most people would agree with that. So yeah, I mean, it's awesome, and it will be free to play completely. If you want to, there will be no pay to win really, unless you want to pay to get more cards, sort of. But you get free stuff at such a rate that you can eventually get the cards you need anyways. They've done. I think right now they have a pretty good balance. And as long as that doesn't change too drastically, it'll be a great way to play Magic for free.
Okay. What are wild cards?
Oh, good question. So wild cards are sometimes the booster packs you open will provide them. If you get more than 4 of any given, you don't need more than 4 of any card in your collection. That's the rules of Magic. You just will never use them the way that a digital product works anyways. so anything that is extra or beyond that turns into points towards these wild cards, right? And a wild card you can spend to create a card that is missing in your collection that you want to include in one of your decks. So you're like, well, I want this rare card. I didn't open it in a booster pack, but I have a rare wild card in my collection. I will now cash in this one rare wild card to make that one rare that I wanted.
So it's crafting, basically.
It's crafting 100%. That's how they engender that repetitive play. It's the best way to do it. So, and it's a powerful way to get people to want to come back and play, because they're like, well, I could make any deck I want. I have all these wild cards and I get them for just playing. And there's like resources wise, there's gold that you can use to buy stuff. And then there's gems, which are the moneyed version that you can get more stuff with. But no, it's beautiful. It's beautiful and it plays fast. You can play it on a crappy computer even. They've done a pretty good job scaling it down, which is for 90% of the people who are going to buy and play Magic, that's going to be the way that they're going to play it. So that was pretty smart on their part.
Okay. All right. So we've gone over all the expansions. We've gone over their digital stuff. You talked about what you normally use while you're playing online on your Twitch stream.
Yeah.
So with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up the second half of the two-parter. Always growing, always getting a little better every year, right, guys?
Yeah, it's been an awesome experience every single time. So thank you so much for having us.
One of these years, Jared will remember he has to talk into the thing with the...
Yeah, I know. I was getting, hopefully I'm a little louder than I was. But no, you can find me on twitch.tv/bettermagic. I'm also on Twitter at Jared Juett, JARREDJUETT. You can find me there. If you search Play Better Magic, all one word, on YouTube, you can find some old videos and podcasts that we used to do. Like I said, I stream a couple times a week. So please come hang out.
Right.
And I only basically exist on Twitter at Can't Play Piano, and that's all I've got on a closer. So
Awesome.
Well, as always, you'll be able to find all these links to your social media accounts and your Twitch streams on the show notes attached to both this episode and the last episode, and every other episode I'll link to from the last 4 years. So with that, gentlemen, thank you so much for coming and spending a couple hours with me this week recording these episodes. Everybody, thank you for listening in. Stay tuned for the outro and the patron thanks, and I will talk at you later. I'd like to thank everybody for listening to the Indiana Geeking Podcast. You can find the blog post for this episode, as well as information like Hoosier convention listings, past podcast episodes, local geek shop reviews, and more at indianageeking.com. If you like what I am doing, there are ways you can help. First, you can make sure you subscribe through Apple Podcasts, Google Music, Stitcher, or whatever your preferred podcatcher is. Also, if your method allows it, I'd love it if you leave me a rating and review. Good or bad, it lets me know how I'm doing. Also, if you are so inclined, you can visit the Support Geeking in Indiana page on the blog, where you can find links to the Geeking Store, affiliate sites, and places where you can donate to help with the blog's expenses. The music this week is provided by two great local bands. The opening song was This Side of Paradise off of Year 2 by 5 Year Mission, and the closing music I'm currently talking over is Keep Beach City Weird by the Shakeups from the Shakeups in Beach City. You can find all of their information in the show notes, and remember, support local, friends. Last, but certainly not least, I want to give a huge thanks to my patrons for supporting the blog and podcast. One of their few perks is a shout out on the cast, and I'm more than happy to give love to Becca, Caitlin, Claire, Gabe, Ginger, Kayla, Mal, Michael, Rachel, Spencer, Taylor, and Tommy for their support. Thank you all for listening. I'll see you next time, and always remember, live long and prosper, may the force be with you, and as always, be excellent to each other.